Roll call. Commissioners Fawcett, Kaiser, Hubel, Ward, and myself are all present. Additions to the agenda. Hearing none, we are going to move a new business item from A to C just to so we can get through a few things since we have a lengthy agenda today. Comments from the public. Okay. It's like who has that poster? Jerry Cole. Jerry Cole. Didn't see that.
My name is Jerry Cole. Just trying to get out and about in the county. Wanted to take a minute to officially introduce myself. I'm a candidate for county commissioner. I've been the mayor of Rainier for 24 years. And I just want to encourage you and the community to get a hold of me if you have any questions. Just keep it short and sweet. Again, Jerry Cole, candidate for county commissioner. Appreciate you allowing public comment and giving me a chance to introduce myself.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for coming out.
Thank you, Jerry.
Cody.
Howdy, Cody James Pace with Paddle Shack. I was asked to come talk today a little bit about some of the fishing challenges we're having with some of the fishermen out at the marina. First off, I fully support the fishing community being out there and doing that. We do have some challenges with a select group of individuals. You know, it's more than a few, but that come around to the kayak launch dock and will fish inside the buoy. And the real issue here is two things. One, safety and the infrastructure. So we'll get people casting right into where people are trying to launch their kayaks. Casting, hitting the dock where people are walking. I was watching some kids walking and playing on the dock after they got done paddling. And they're just casting, you know, we can have hooks and things there. I've seen multiple people get their lines wrapped around hoses that are connected to the honey pot. And tying off to it, which that doesn't have bumpers. So some issues and concerns there. But it definitely makes the paddlers feel very uncomfortable to try to go out and paddle when you're surrounded by boats and they're casting into you. I guess the third issue is when my approach always is to try to just encourage and let them know, hey, the rules are to fish on the other side of the buoy. The challenge is every time there's a small group that when you let them know that, they move. But there's a group of people that when you do that, they become very belligerent. They are very disrespectful. And they cite, you know, you don't own the water and all of this kind of stuff. And you know, really what I'm always trying to express to them is, you know, this is a safety thing. And then also to the infrastructure there with all the lines running it. So we have a challenge with that. And it definitely can impact our business to where people don't feel comfortable launching right there. And that was part of the reason of splitting the launch so we didn't have that interaction with the boats. So I am fully in support of people fishing on the other side of the buoy. But we have no way to enforce that when they act like this and do this. You know, I don't want to put myself or our business in a situation where people come and retaliate against us. I'm there all the time, so they know where I'm at. So just looking for some guidance from the port for how we can best handle those situations, because I don't want people not fishing. I just want them to utilize the boundaries and just, you know, make sure that everyone can enjoy the outdoors together. So that was.
Thank you. We're going to be discussing some of that stuff today in executive session. We have some ideas surrounding it. So okay. I went down there a few times. I saw you there. So loud and clear on that, and I can definitely see the issue there. So thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Commissioner.
I like your shoes.
Thank you.
That's your logo. Do we have anybody online? Leave their hand up online. Okay. No more public comment. Consent agenda. Items A and B.
Move to adopt consent agenda, items A and B.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. New business. We're up moving line item A to the bottom line or here. So we're going to start with the 2027 5-year capital budget. Guy Glenn.
Morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
See me again this time here in budget season. So we met last time and we kind of went over some of the capital budget, bigger picture topics related to our strategic business plan and priorities. So today we'll get in a little more detail and go. This is kind of the first time, at least since I've been here in recent history, that we've done a more disciplined 5-year capital planning budget where we look out not just to 1 to 2 years ahead, but 5 years, because a lot of these projects take multiple years to get done and need to conserve our reserves and our cash and stuff for future projects beyond 1 or 2 years. So it's a good process to go through annually and review. It's a working document. So but before I get started on that, one part of the budget process, we're required to appoint a budget officer each year. And we need to get it in the minutes. And what I would propose and what we talked about is to appoint me as the budget officer. It's different than the chair of the budget committee. That's separate motion and all that for budget committee, but formally appoint a budget officer. So I would ask you all to consider that and
Let's do that.
all right.
Moved.
All in favor of that?
Sure. Second.
Is that just for the budget process or why is this something new? Because we always do it in the budget committee.
It's actually something required through the statute. And the auditors, they asked this year if we had it documented. And the budget officer is the one that prepares all the budget items and kind of leads the process. It's separate from the budget committee. Does that help?
Me, we don't do that on the other boards, but it's fine. No.
All in favor of that?
Aye.
A second?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
There you go.
You're official.
Yeah.
I snuck something in the amendment there. Anyway, slide. I'll go over a little bit on capital planning and the importance of multi-year capital planning. And a lot of my information here that I'm going to share is from the Government Finance Officers Association, general principles and, guidelines. So I want it to be comprehensive, financially sustainable, and just to ensure effective management of capital assets. So slide. Did you do it? Do it again. I think we missed one in there. Anyway, why don't you go back? There it is. Okay, so this again, the financial plan and our strategic business plan is supporting financial performance of the port and port business lines through regular monitoring and coordination. And so today we're doing the 5-year capital budget. Next month, I'll be going into the operating budget. And then end of April, May will be a budget committee engagement, and June will be our public hearing and budget adoption. So we're moving right along in the process. This time year it seems to go pretty quickly for me. So slide. Again. I don't know why that's not forward, but I'll change my schedule. But with the capital planning, we look at whether they're tangible or intangible asset. It's used in operations and benefits support for more than a year. So it means we expense it out over more than 1 year. It's depreciated. And so that's what differentiates a capital asset from an operating expense. And just some examples of our assets there, including it's the hard assets like Port Westford Pier, aircraft hangars. But it also includes things like our strategic business plan or any kind of planning documents or things that last longer than 1 year, that have a life essentially, and or software systems or things like that. So it's pretty comprehensive to consider. But slide, we'll find out. And so yeah, we want to look at infrastructure supporting private investment and the good of the public. Also want to consider changes in policy, local policy, state policy, things like, the seismic requirements. And when they change, we need to keep up with those kinds of things. We want to look at stakeholder and community needs. And then on the financial side, look at current or potential positive revenue generation. If you've heard me say that before, get to a reminder, but this again, input from stakeholders and the public. Slide. Anyway, just to look at the project, it's good to look at how the scope and like how we want to phase projects if they're larger projects, and get good cost estimates and try and adjust those to inflation. And then just look at all the components plus the post-completion costs that are, to maintain that asset, or, what we're looking at long-term. Then ongoing life cycle costs. So when we're looking at funding for supporting the cost of that asset, and then how it would impact future operating budgets. So it's a real comprehensive look. We don't want to be, hurting our operating budget by investing in projects that are going to be pulling our performance down. So next slide. Prioritize projects that want health and safety. So if there's something dangerous or could be problem for liability reasons, that would be a priority. We want to look at preserving what assets we have, either renewing them, fixing them up, or replacing them. And if we look to add any additional service or expand the assets that we have to support our operations, and those would be in line with any updated policies we have, like the strategic business plan, or studies that we get, kind of like the marina analysis we had done last year. Slide. You do? Sorry, I got a.
Looks like the last one.
So this is coordination with related entities like county, state, any other local districts. So we might want to partner with, looking at partnering with our tenants or other stakeholders. Again, just like I mentioned on the operating budget, just more detail on the impacts there. And depending on the project, we may also want to look at more analytical items like payback period, cost benefit ratio, and cash flow analysis. So it just depends on the project. So slide. So this is kind of starting out. We're looking at what we're gonna spend over the 5 years, and then by also maintaining our reserves, our strategic reserve and our operating reserve. And we talked about that last time. The strategic reserve is for planned projects. And then, strategic reserve is for unplanned projects. And then the operating reserve is for any kind of unknown business interruptions or things that may come about on the operating side of the picture. And in addition to those reserves, we're looking at $16.5 to $18.5 million in investment that we'll make over 5 years. So I'll get into a little more detail here. Slide. On the assumptions, I built a model essentially that combines all these different things. And I'll go through that a little bit here in a minute, but quite a few assumptions. I just wanted to go over this briefly. We assumed a balanced budget, meaning that we're not putting any money in reserves. We're not taking any money away from reserves. So any kind of additional cash flow would have a positive impact on what we can do. Any reduction in cash flow would have a negative impact. So it assumes annual collection of the property tax, or tax. Assumes $1 million of those funds are used in the capital budget. And included $1 million in non-operating interest income, like we've been getting out of the LGIP with the interest on our deposit accounts or reserve accounts. So that's over, not each year, but that's over the 5-year period. We're also going to be doing some projects that require common area maintenance revenue that will pass along to tenants with the common area maintenance agreement. So I'm anticipating we might collect up to around $250,000 in revenue there, carrying up to 2 years of project delays. And I'm not figuring on any other planned projects. We'd use 1.2 million funds from the Port Westward Capital Reserve. I added a 15% contingency on all the projects. We all know that projects usually come in higher than budgeted, and especially when we're looking at it a longer period, it may even be more than 15%. And factored in no emergency use of the operating reserve. So we're keeping the operating reserve at its level. If we do have a need for it, that would again pull money from the capital budget. And it only includes the current grants awarded, not ones that we're speculating in the future. So, all right, next slide. Right now, I didn't want to hand this out to you because then I'd lose your attention. So hand it out now. Yeah. Again, this is a working document. It's not set in stone. It's a starting point.
It's see they all separately.
Before you start looking at this, I'll try to grab your attention.
It's so pretty.
Before we get started on the details there, this is the beginning cash. So it's available cash beginning February 28th. And so, and then that cash is, I kind of projected out over the 5 years. So that's what I consider the total sources of cash. So we have our BMO account, the various different LGIP accounts, the tax account, which is estimating $500,000 a year. I've got the grant funding currently secured in there, the interest and CAM. So about 27 million there. Go ahead, slide. And on the uses of cash, capital projects, looking at around 15.5 million plus the contingency. And so add those two together, that's where that 17 million or so comes from. And then the operating reserve, we would hold that at 3.9, which is roughly 6 months of operating expenses. And I projected out a 2.5% CPI increase each year over the 5 years. So that's what it would go up to. And our strategic reserve would be kind of what's left over after everything else. And so when we get to 2031, that's what I'm projecting we would have in our strategic reserve. So the total uses and the total available cash balance. So we're looking at both of them balancing there. So next slide. This is a little more detail on the breakdown of the funds. So because we'll be pulling funds, it won't be just a big amount. We'll be pulling some out of like Port Westward, their reserve, putting it back in their operating reserve, and then the Pope and Talbot reserve from the insurance funds, that's P&T reserve, and property tax coming out of one. So a little more detail. Next slide. Now we'll get into this project specific, and you can look at more details on the handout I gave you, but
I see what you said.
looking at a total cost of 3.9 million. And then we have 2.7 in the Connect Oregon grant. And so that would be 1.2 in port cash. Slide. On Columbia City, looking at about just under $1 million. And that's for the work on the pier, the docks, and all that, and a little bit of work on the upland site too. That site has a lot of potential. So we wanted to kind of think ahead there and set aside a little bit of funding for some projects on the upland. Or slide. The airport, this is a really good story for the port. We're looking at putting almost $8.5 million of capital improvements into the airport. A lot of that's the runway project that's going on this summer, but that'll be mostly in 27, the funding coming out. So we have like 4.3 million in grant funding. So that would be 4.1 million in port cash, and that primarily is from replacing the roofs on all the T hangars. And we plan on doing a couple each year. So and those, we need to preserve those assets. They've been there since the mid-90s, I believe. So we just want to get on the rotation to get those roofs replaced, and some various other things you can look on the list. But slide. Multnomah, just under $1 million there. Most of that's going to be on paving around the buildings. And that would be subject to that CAM charge. Some of the tenants there pay common area maintenance charges. So again, that's we could do more at Multnomah, but this is what we're prioritizing. It also includes the new roof and siding on the maintenance shop, the old Winter Circle building. So slide. On Pope and Talbot, that's the cleanup funds that we have now. And it gets a little fuzzy with Pope and Talbot because we do have the two sources of funding there with the insurance funds we've already received. And then there's the insurance funds where we send the bill to them and they pay a percentage of it. Anyway, Elliot's the wizard on all the Pope and Talbot stuff. So, but that's what we're including in the capital budget. That could be more than that depending on how the project moves along, or it could even be that we don't have the project anymore. I guess there's potential of it being taken over by somebody else or something. I won't shouldn't have meant.
Good conversation.
Yeah, anyway, slide. McNulty, Milton, no projects at Milton. We don't have anything planned there. McNulty would be some site readiness planning. We just put 200, or roughly 200,000 in there. And that's over 5 years. So again, we can do more there to, if it was prioritized in that way, but we just wanted to put something in. Slide. And this is kind of one of my priorities, at least on the admin finance side. We want to develop a whole new, what's called enterprise resource planning, which is ERP. And that's a software that would include accounting, and it would integrate everything, our fixed asset schedule, our point of sale, property management, so that it would be like a one-stop shop where where we're not relying on Excel spreadsheets and historic, kind of documents and all that. But that takes a lot of preparation, implementation, training. And so it is estimating 250,000 for that. So, but I'll have more information there as we move forward here. I am trying to get that project going in the next 18 months or so, but yeah, anyway, I'll go into more detail there. Slide. And here's the one that I don't have anything included on. I just said to be determined. That's the marina and the marine park. And on the sheet here, we've identified the projects that could be done. And it's kind of some of them have good numbers, and we've got a few that we could firm up a little more. But basically all those numbers I did, any funds we pull for the marina would either mean we wouldn't have funds for the other projects, or we'd have to use additional reserves. And so I kind of wanted to put it in context of the other sites and our strategic plan going forward. So
you mentioned using $1 million from the tax. Is that specific to any particular project, or is that in support of everything on this?
Everything, yeah.
Okay.
And it would be timing wise too. And our intent with the tax is to try and use it for leverage on a grant funded project. So it was arbitrary. I mean, we could use more or less than that, depending on whether it's in the 4th year or the 2nd year. And we only wanted to use 250 in the 2nd year and 1.5 in the, 4th year or something like that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yep.
All right, slide. And this is a slide. I know Nick likes the graphic pictures, but it kind of breaks down. This would be the sources for the cash on the capital projects for the 5 years. And so you can look at the reserves, strategic reserve, the property tax, operating reserve, grant funds, capital budget, which is the large part, the green in the middle, and then included the interest in common area maintenance funds that will be generated over that term as well. So it's, any adjustments there impact the total and the percentage of funds. So, and that capital budget is 11.5 million of port cash and 7 million of grant funding. So, all right, slide. Again, this kind of a summary of the projects, the operating reserve, strategic reserve. And just a reminder on the budget, the Government Finance Officers Association says there's 4 evaluation areas. One, the budget is a policy document. It's what we adopt and kind of direction of the port going forward. It's a financial plan. So we have to look at performance and investing and things like that. And then it's a guide for operations for all of us as staff, you know, which projects do we prioritize and when. And then also it's just like today, it's a communication document. So we want to share with you all as elected commissioners and with the public and with stakeholders. So everyone is on the same page. So slide. That's all I have. So, and you can look through the schedule here, and it's a working document, and there's no way we'll know what the actuals are going to be even a month from now. But when you look out more than 2 or 3 years, it really gets challenging. So, but it's a starting point and a good point for discussion. And so, any questions at this point?
I'm curious if we've done any sort of analysis on some of these capital projects around the expected revenue generation associated with them. Is that maybe upcoming?
So you'd ask that question. That'll be in the operating budget. I'm only doing the operating budget, at least at this point, for 1 year. There is a kind of a interest in the government community that we should be doing a multi-year operating budget too, because meaning 1 to 2 years, because you really have to look, you know, at that 2-year span. That just takes more time.
Yeah.
Might be something I work on next year, but I just want to get a pretty good operating budget in front of you, because that's 2 weeks from now. And so we're trying to get everything.
I assume if it's in here, we feel pretty good, like say new T hangers, that we're going to get a good return on it.
Yeah. And also at the airport, we're considering the addition of construction of new hangars, so potentially new revenue or enhanced revenue that we don't have now. But the T hangars are, you know, a very good source of operating revenue. There seems to be a lot of demand for it, and we're you know, we want to make sure we maintain those assets.
Yeah, I have certainly some questions on some line items that, but I don't think they're for here.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's not fair for me to give you this now, but I didn't want you to get it too early where you be in the details, because we got to look at the big picture too.
understood.
I would just say overall, I appreciate the level of detail and planning out 5 years. Really gives us an idea of the types of things we're looking at doing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that.
Other questions?
Good job.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, next Oregon grant, Elliot.
Good morning, commissioners.
Morning.
Bill, it's taken a while to load it up.
Some good slides too.
Stuff coming. Good stuff coming.
You can kind of see it, Fort Westbury, right?
Got to go to outer space and back. You got to give it time.
Remember when it used to, the pixelation used to run across the screen as the picture downloaded?
Yes.
Oh, I can start. Oh, there we go. This morning, I would like to brief you on the Connect Oregon grant application that we are currently working on. Slide. Connect Oregon is a state-managed competitive grant program run by the Oregon Department of Transportation that funds air, rail, and marine infrastructure projects. Eligible participants include public, private, and nonprofit entities that can meet the 30% match requirement. As you know, the Port has had a good record of success applying for grants through this program, Previously, we've been awarded $7.3 million by Connect Oregon, and it was used for rail improvements, constructing Beaver Dock Berth 1, and as well as a future project, the funding for the first phase of the Pipe Bridge Extension Project, which will be the placement of piles and caps that will extend the pipe bridge that we built in early 2024 after the barge collision. Slide. How can Connect Oregon funds be used? Eligible uses are to buy land, fund capital construction projects, construct new buildings or renovate existing ones, purchase equipment with 20 years of useful life, and design and engineering professional services. Slide. This has been a particularly difficult program to scope. Initially, the program was announced last December with the $75 million budget for grant work. However, due to a severe shortfall in funds collected through gas taxes, the governor has reduced Connect Oregon's budget by $42 million. So it went from $75 million to about $30 million to help meet the shortfall in ODOT's operating budget. This is significant as it impacts the amount we can realistically expect to receive through a grant. Next slide. So as a rule of thumb, we try to keep our grant applications below 10% of the program budget. Reason is if our grant application request too big, like 20% of the available funds, it may face more resistance. We may be asked to descope the project, and a request that is too large may simply reduce our chances of an award. And in fact, during the Connect Oregon 9 deliberations, it's appeared to me that from the evaluation committee's discussions, one project was actually eliminated because it was too big an ask. So this slide shows our target request as a result of this reduction decreased from 7.5 million to 3 million. And our preference is to maintain the project scope that we developed and work with our tenants to instead increase the match well beyond the 30% required by the program. Maintaining so basically our ask is defined by the program size. So we're targeting 2.5 million because we believe this will improve our chances of being awarded a grant. However, we also understand this could pose issues for the tenants because it's a lot of money, and we are discussing it with them. We can't rule out the possibility that they will prefer to scope one element rather than work with the larger match. Next slide. So having said all that, here's our proposed project. And it's going to be very familiar to you because it's a scaled back version of both our PIDP and our build federal grant applications. So for Connect Oregon, we are basically, our initial target is to complete that pipe bridge extension that's being funded through Connect Oregon 9. So in this slide, you'll again see that blue line that goes from the left side where the new pipe bridge was built in 2024. And the extension would go across the lagoon and then terminate at the hose tower on berth 1. Next slide. So this slide shows the various components of the scope we've proposed. Our intention is to build upon the piles and caps that are being funded by Connect Oregon 9, which was a grant of 2.72 million. And for Connect Oregon 10, the project scope will include constructing pipe bridge superstructure, adding pipelines and related infrastructure such as inert gas and vapor recovery line, and some electrical conduit, and then demolishing and removing the existing pipelines that are running along the berth. These first three components are the physical construction elements, and it's possible one could be eliminated if we need to reduce the scope of the project. Remaining components are engineering and permitting, construction, administration, and contingency and escalation, thinking in inflation. Next slide. So based on the full scope I just described, the estimated project cost is 10.15 million. And so not wanting to exceed the 10% of the program budget with our target of 2.5 million, that leaves our match. I should also add that at the end of last week, ODOT validated our assumption on the sweet spot for the grant application because they indicated at the OPPA meeting that you should try to be, $2 to $3 million is a maximum. So our 2.5 is spot on. So based on a $10.15 million project and this target grant application of 2.5, that leaves a tenant match of 7.65 million, which is 3.825 million per dock user. So we're still discussing the applications with our tenants and the need. We obviously need to resolve this shortly because we have to submit our application at the end of the week on the 27th. I do want to be clear, the dock users have been supportive of the project. In fact, one of them is holding off because they're considering bigger pipes, which isn't really a big deal because we actually produce for them budget spaces, 6 variations of pipe sizes and configurations of pipes. So 14-inch diameter, 16-inch, 20-inch, knowing that they might want to try to do a fit. And frankly, I don't even think that decision needs to get made now because actually our target grant is being defined by a percentage of the program rather than all the other inputs. So I don't know if ODOT would really have an issue if when we start to do the project, we went with bigger budget, funded it ourselves.
Also, we got a bigger pile as part of that rebuild project, so we have capacity there to do what he's talking about, your pipe bridge.
So that's where we are. And I'll also, they have been supportive of those two, actually 3 federal grants. We've got similar amounts of commitments from them. So hopefully we'll be able to do the same on this one. Those were just bigger pots. So their return on their commitment is a lot bigger. We get that resolved shortly. So slide. Do you have any questions?
I just have one question. So assuming we get all of the grants we applied for and there's crossover on those projects, right? How does that work? Do we get to shift one of the grants to do something else or?
That would be a wonderful problem to have. So the federal grants, they talk to each other. So that's a very unlikely problem. For Connect Oregon, our plan will be to indicate that we would apply that money, if we got Connect Oregon, to other areas. The place I specifically have in mind is the upstream end of Dock 1. But we could also then, go for something else if working with our tenants. There's an area. That's what they've told me that, and in a way that happened on Connect Oregon.
The nice thing is next month, we're going to DC for Mission to Washington. We're going to be able to meet with some of these granting agencies while we're there. So.
What is the timelines on the different grant applications?
EDIP, we were supposed to know in December, and we still don't know, but for a couple of weeks ago, it was told it could be any day now. So the others are, I think, fall into June. So that's PDIP because that's active. Protect is no longer, that got withdrawn.
Yeah, so that's what
And Build is June. Connect Oregon would probably be about the same time.
Okay. Right.
What do you anticipate duration of once things are funded, start to finish on completion of project?
It depends on the full scope. And I did not print out the schedule in front of me, so I had to go by my memory, but we're actually already starting the permitting. And I think we could, the piles will get done in 2 months at most. That's the in-water work window for driving pile. We don't have that same limitation for doing the pipes. And really, it's the permitting that's the issue.
Okay. And I know we've seen the drawings and everything. Everything remains what the plan was for the picture you had pulled up and all the lower berth. The lower downstream berth and everything was, even though funding is different for grant. No alterations there as far as that goes.
Even for the Connect Oregon grant? Yeah, it would just be funding for the pipe bridge. So those other ones were like $26 million grant.
Gotcha.
Project scope, total budget. And this one's 10.15, but it's we're more specific on the pipelines that we'd be putting on as well.
I have a really nice grant table that Elliot put together, just kind of tracking how some of the if thens and overlaps of some of the grants. So I'll send that out to you with the calendar.
Great. You can see that. That'd be great.
Yeah.
The decision makers or connect. Is that a pool of people that is established and continues year after year, or does it change it?
I believe it changes every year.
And who,
Answer that.
So.
Supports.
But he's next anyway.
He isn't, are you done, Elliot? Just if we're gonna have this. Didn't mean to rush you out of here.
thank you, Elliot.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Good morning.
For having me. So we kind of jump right to your question is that I represent the Department of Aviation. I'm on the Department of Aviation Board. So the board selected me as the representative of the Department of Aviation to the Connect Grant Committee that made the decisions that ended up with you being one of the recipients. So
For Connect Nine.
each within the Department of Transportation, and every year they go through a selection process. And usually the representatives are board members who have knowledge about the organizations. And as you know, board members change from time to time, so you're not really sure who's going to be there. I plan on remaining on the Board of Aviation for a while. My term comes up this year, and I'm in the application to renew that with the governor's approval. So I hope that I will be on that committee because I found it really interesting, and the committee found it helpful that because of my port background that I could give some insight to many of the port projects that were being submitted. So it's kind of a long explanation, but
Oh, it's interesting because of course it does all come down to people and their experience and their prejudices, you know, one way or the other. Are these decisions made in open session or they are? So we can actually see the process?
yes,
I'd be very interested in that.
sure.
If I could just say one more thing about Connect Oregon, which I know some of you know, Nancy and Brian, you were down at OPPA in Seaside or SDAO, we had the Port Caucus. Frustratingly, Connect Oregon is one of our only sources in the state of a good amount of funding. And it's not even dedicated to ports. We have to share with rail and air. What we're hopefully going to try to do at the OPPA level is try to get some more dedicated funding for ports, specifically either separately dredging for some of the smaller ports that can't afford to do it, and these small marinas, ourselves included, that need some help with that, but also just from an overall pool of funding where, you know, we always rely on Connect Oregon and we're competing, well, at least not with transit anymore. It's rail and air and marine. And it's, you know, there's a lot of ask every year. There's got to be at least twice or three times the amount of ask that there is available. I'm sure this year it's going to be even more. Yeah. So we're all kind of competing for the same pots of money. We all have infrastructure that's failing, yet we have no dedicated source for the funding. So if there's any way we can affect that, we're going to try like hell to do it and make sure that ports get recognized as necessary infrastructure that we need constant investment.
It really does seem like, how is that even possible with as much water as we have, as dependent on as we are in industry? It's like, how did this happen? We end up with nobody funding that.
And part of it is like with the channel, you have competing interests at the federal level because the Corps is responsible for the
Right.
navigation channel. So yeah, there's some gray area there, but yeah, definitely need that money for all of our aging piles and docks and buildings and all the stuff that we all face as ports.
So that's just kind of finish that portion of it up, is that the committee that reviews those grant applications makes a recommendation. We go through a lot of arm twisting and a lot of discussion regarding how do we want to rank these. So they are in a rank order. There's criteria that's developed and helps guide us to what is that ranking. But ultimately, the final decision is left up to the Department of Transportation. So it's a recommendation. This is the order that we as a committee, as the specialists in our own fields, that are recommending to the department of how Connect grants should be distributed. So it's multi-layers of oversight, multi-layers of decision making.
Do they usually follow your recommendations?
Yeah. This last year was, I think it sailed through exactly the way that we had requested it.
How many people are on this committee?
goodness, we would say 15,
Wow.
maybe, yeah, that's probably pretty.
From all over.
From all over the state,
Yeah.
all different areas.
We went down, a couple of us went down when they were, not debating, but considering you guys were working on ranking. We
Yeah.
were able to sit in that process.
Yeah, very interesting.
What's that?
Thank you.
It's quite a way to make sausage, I'm telling you, so.
Yeah.
Real quick, before we get started, staff, would like to invite, Lindsay and Amy to stay for the next session. If you guys have some other things you'd like to do and get going on, I'd appreciate you doing that as well. So I know everybody's busy. This is gonna be a long session or section, so thank you. Take my part.
Well,
Explanation. Good job on it. Those nice things. Everybody aware of why they're.
Well.
Okay, yeah. See you. Yeah.
I got my latest video.
Good. Food for thought. Development needs, thanks. You're countering our work.
I cleared the room pretty well.
Yeah.
I'm nervous about that. I think we're waiting on
Yeah, I have some-
documentation.
Have something to print out for you, my fault. Yes, please. Gonna be just a second.
Can I ask what sort of time are we expecting for this session? I'm just curious.
2:00-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah.
You could talk all day. I'll listen.
Yeah, right.
You know, this is it's a conversation.
Okay.
So if hopefully there's significant input from the commission on the topics that we're going to be covering. But I'll hold my comments, you know, just to keep us on track. Time to get up and stretch.
Letting that go, are you?
What is it?
Told you I could if you pay me that much money right now. Yeah, I told you, you would. Dead serious too. I'll have it done by the end of the week too. Yes, yes. I know you think I'm joking.
Well, you can ask for forgiveness, so. Thank you very much. Yep.
Yeah, enough.
Be 3 pages each.
2 or 3, I got you 2.
Oh, I think I gave you a. Yeah.
Double sided, got it.
Owen, can you state your name for the record?
Yeah.
Our hand. Okay.
Look at that agenda and thought you had an easy day ahead, didn't you? Yeah, that's right.
Oh, I assumed this was gonna be involved. Yeah.
Morning, commissioners.
Good morning.
You know, my name is Jim Knight. I don't know who that old guy in the screen is up there.
John Clark, he's our director.
All the black and white days of. Represent SDAO, Special Districts Association of Oregon. And it's a real pleasure of our organization to ensure this port, and it's been a joy to work with you over the years. I want to tell you that in my mind, because of my which I'll get into a little bit. What we're about to discuss may be one of the most important meetings that you will have as commissioners. And the purpose of this is to help you be able to become comfortable in sharing your thoughts and through the decision-making process that you do as commissioners. And the way that that happens successfully is really good, clear communication between each of you, sharing exactly how you feel about the topics that are in front of you or over the course of your tenure. To do it in a polite way is helpful. That doesn't always happen that way. But having your strong opinions is an awesome experience. And sharing those with others to come to a collaborative decision doesn't get any better than that. This document you have in front of you is an opportunity for you as individual commissioners to give an assessment of how you perceive each of these categories. Some of you have been on this commission for a while, some of you are relatively new, and you have a diverse opinions about how things should run with the port. And these are the guidepost questions that we're going to get into. But I'm going to do a lot less of the talking and really try to encourage you to share your input on each of these components. So my background, some of you know, I was the executive director of the Port of Astoria for about 5 years, and that started in 2014. Before that, I was the director of the marine terminals for the Port of Olympia, and I had worked for the Port of Olympia for 7 years and was instrumental in helping the port go from no customers. And my very first meeting when I was interviewed was, we need somebody to bring ships to our port. I said, well, that's a unique idea for a port to bring in ships. But as I got the tour, I realized there's no ships there, and there hasn't been a ship at the Port of Olympia for years. And I was hired on a contingency basis for 6 months to let's see what this guy can do for us. That turned into, we filled up that terminal with cargo, all types of cargo, from wind energy cargo to imported steel, ingots of aluminum that came from Russia. It was a robust opportunity, and one of my most favorite times in my career was to go from zero to a port that needed more room. And that continues on to this day. So I was recruited by the Port of Astoria to see if we could duplicate the same thing that happened in Olympia. And the duplication really is not a possibility. You could not do at the Port of Astoria what the Port of Olympia could do. You can't do at the Port of Astoria what many ports can do at the port on the river. And a part of that is failing infrastructure, really not enough laydown area for cargo to be handled there. There's no rail access. There's really no terminal space. It's great for cruise ships. That has been a very good business for the port. My background prior to all of this port work, which really goes back early in my career when I joined the Navy in 1971. And if you recall, many of you, I can tell by looking at you, remember the 1970s, but these were very volatile times in the United States, that we had serious race relation issues and problems. My first week on the USS Ranger, which was an aircraft carrier, there was a race riot, and a Marine was killed during that race riot. And I grew up in Minnesota, and I wasn't aware of these types of conflicts just because we were mostly a white community and we didn't have interaction with other folks. Navy trained me to become a facilitator and certified that position. And my job was to help sailors figure out how to get along with each other. And you could not come up with a more dangerous and more complicated process than doing that. Because on that ship were Ku Klux Klan members. There were Black Panthers had a chapter that was secretively on the ship, and there was an incredible amount of conflict. I seem to like conflict. I seem to like to find out how can we help an organization of people get along with each other for a common good. And this is why I like working for commissioners. It's because it's great to have your input and your opinions. new perspectives to force us into a good common good for the whole board. So that's in a nutshell, how I came to be doing what I'm doing. After I left the Port, Special Districts Association gave me the opportunity to become one of the independent senior consultants. And this is the favorite, I'm having more fun doing this type of work than many of the things I've had to do in the past. Because something good does come out of this process, something that you will be able to use for the rest of your life. So here's how we do this, is that you haven't seen this before. And this is a question. There's 6 different components. The board duties and responsibilities. The second one is the operational compliance. Get into budget and finance, customer relations, personnel administration, policies and procedures. Those are the primary components that take place in the management of a port district. And any other organization that has a board of directors that are elected by its constituencies, same issues that appear. So what we're trying to accomplish today is to give you the opportunity to speak to your fellow commissioners. What are your perceptions on each of these categories? So I'm just going to barrel right through this and start out with the very first one, the board duties and responsibilities. And I really need each of you to have some comments and input on each of these, but it is you sharing with your fellow commissioners. Here's how I really see how well we're adhering to the standards of good stewardship. And we've given you a kind of a simplification processes. I think we're doing pretty good. Or I think there's some work that needs to be done within this category, or I think we're in a world of trouble over that, or any of these specific categories. That's how this process will work. When we're done with this conversation, I'll be taking notes, and I'm really good at remembering what people had to say. So you're not going to see me doing a whole lot of scribble, except it'll trigger my memory of what the things were said. The good news, I can always go back to YouTube and say, well, that's not what I said, and that's not what he said, so, which is going to be very helpful. So do you have any questions so far at this point? All right, so I'd like to find out from you, how do you feel individually about whether or not you feel like you're being good stewards right now of this organization? Are you doing good? Lots of room for improvement, or this is not doing well at all? Who would anybody like to start?
I think anything could use improvement, obviously, but as far as people staying involved, a pretty overall good job as far as everybody putting their best efforts forth. I feel like we do a pretty fair job.
Nick, how long have you been with the commission?
2 years now, right? Yeah.
That would kind of help me to understand this. I really wanted to ask, and it's not too late to do that, but as you talk, help me understand, why did you become a commissioner? What in the world were you thinking? You said yes to this opportunity. So Nick, why did you want to become a commissioner?
So I was kind of a little bit in the line of work already. I was a tugboat captain. I work for a labor union. I'm a regional representative for them. So I was very much involved with marine transportation already. And
like in the river?
Yeah.
Okay.
And up and down the West Coast. But yeah, so that's kind of how I wound up to Set Point. And I was intrigued and engaging in more public platform type situation. So here I am.
Okay. Nancy.
So this is my 7th year, and I ran because I felt that the port did not have good stewardship when it came to the environment. I wasn't aware of all the policies and procedures that were already in place. I have shifted my view somewhat, but I'm really intrigued by this question of our standards of good stewardship. I'm not sure I know what our standards are. And I find that question really intriguing because it is, to me, when I think of good stewardship, of course, my first inclination is to think of the environment, because to me, that is the most important thing we've got going. We're in a crisis, environmentally speaking, worldwide. What is our role in maintaining good stewardship of the land, of the water? But of course, good stewardship applies to much more than just the environment. And I think it's such an important question that I really wish we spent more time on. And I think we could benefit greatly if we all had an idea of what we consider to be good stewardship. And I thank you very much for that question.
Do you as a commission have some guidelines that you've put together as a commission as to how you will operate, how you will behave, how will you prioritize?
I think yes, I mean, we do, but do we follow them? I mean, I will say, this is one of the things that I feel I wish I could have had more effect on over my 7 years.
Okay.
Because I don't think we have enough time spent on things like strategic planning, things like we really deal with what's in front of us at every meeting. And I do not see us spending much time as a commission. I'm not sure what happens with staff, but as a commission, I don't see us as being very active in that segment of the port business.
Okay. Thanks for your comments.
Mm-hmm.
So 7 years, ran for a very specific reason, which was I was opposed to a facility, a plant that is still not built, may never be built, but at Port Westward, I felt it was the wrong place in terms of the geology in that location and the ability to survive a 9 earthquake. It's in one of the worst locations the state of Oregon has recognized for that kind of thing. And so I ran specifically for that I thought it was a mistake, and a mistake that we shouldn't make as a group of people that live in the Port District. And so that's why I ran. I've liked all the port commissioners I've worked with. I think we've been open about a lot of stuff. Where we disagree, for example, with this particular project, it doesn't terminate the relationships. So hopefully anyway. I think we have a lot of other good aspects to how we serve the larger community in terms of providing jobs, opportunities, and planning for the future. We have options to do more as the availability and potential clients come into it. So anyway, but that's why I started, and again, it relates a little bit to what Nancy said, and well, quite a lot to what Nancy said.
Feel like you're making progress?
Would we cite on the same kind of, in other words, would we make the same mistake again? I don't know. What I believe is a mistake. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things you could have put out at that site, but that particular kind of a project was.
There was a similar conflict at the Port of Astoria over an LNG terminal being on the peninsula. For the very same reasons. There was really a public outcry. It wasn't so much as the commission wanting to stop it, but it was the public wanting to stop it. Difficult things to go through.
Yeah.
Robert?
LNG facility is a lot different than a diesel refinery, but
yeah,
I've been on the commission 22 years, a couple of years off in the middle there.
How
I
many
did-
years from
22 total.
it? Okay.
I initially ran because we had a proposed port project. I mean, the perception in the North County, accurate, is that the Port of St. Helens takes a lot of money from its tenants at Port Westward and does nothing in return for the community. There is very few, the employment down there is very minimal. The tax revenue comes all the here. And I wanted to see some projects going. I got involved with working with a potential paper mill that was going to go in and site on that facility, and got involved in the hearings, and I was frustrated by the port's lack of caring or interest. And I ran for the port, ran once and lost. And then a few years later, I got on the commission. Still have the same frustrations. I still see when I go through the county, the frustration that I see with the normal public is they expect these kind of developments to be put in. They expect them to address all those concerns and take care of them. But both Port Westward and Scappoose with the airport are frustrated at how long it's taken to get anything done. We just talked a minute ago about the T hangars and the great revenue from it and why we haven't built more. It's kind of baffling to the public and to some of us. So I don't know if I made the port any better, but at least I've been able to raise some issues. My focus is more on, I mean, are we doing good or caution and our stewardship? I mean, I think everybody here is good stewardship. And I also wouldn't want to have 5 of me on the port commission. People who bring the other side of the argument do an excellent job, sometimes too good a job, darn it, but you need that. All these projects need to be shaken down because they're all new and they're all, I mean, they have high likelihood of failure. And I read every day about these projects that fail. So that worries me. With the management of the port currently, I have very little patience for long-range planning. The long-range planning last comprehensive review we went through said the best use of Port Westward was coal transfer. So we have a meeting about a coal transfer and 200 people are busting in from Portland to tell us why that's such a horrible idea. It was a great idea when the county did a long-range plan. So, and that's the way most of these are long-range plans. If you want good entertainment, read one because nothing in them happens. And it's kind of sometimes the opposite of what's going to happen. What I do think we need to do, and we're doing, and we're going to do some of it today, is look at how the port operates and is it working and is it effective on some of our properties and what can we do to better manage them. And we are doing that somewhat site by site, but I feel bad as a commissioner having to tell you I've been on here that many years and then finding things where we're not very efficient and effective and think it's hard to look at it all, though this is, and everybody says this, but this port is very diverse. I mean, when you have, and we're trying to develop marine terminal shipping and heavy scale industrial went in, a small aviation airport, and we have recreation, and it's interesting.
Thanks for your frankness. Appreciate it. Brian?
This is my 5th year, I think. And I ran simply, I grew up in the community. And I think you could argue that, especially South County was fairly thriving when I was a kid. There was a lot of jobs. The lumber industry was doing well. Paper industry was doing well. A lot of that has gone away and not been replaced. And so I'm passionate about community economic development, and the port's mission kind of aligned with how I felt I could make the most impact on that. So that's kind of the short version. I also, something that's important to me is not only taking community input when a project is being proposed and kind of understanding the concerns of the neighbors that sort of project might impact, but also looking at the data and not just relying on feelings, and, we've had a lot of discussions about this, so it's no surprise. But there's some folks out by Port Westward that really just don't want anything in their backyard. And that's understandable. I can see that impacting them. But when we talk about seismic issues, the state of Oregon has regulations around that. There's ways that things have to be built. And I kind of trust those regulations and the experts that developed them. And so when a project is proposed to be sited and fits within all of those regulations, I think that really needs to be recognized. And those sorts of things need to be communicated as well as the impacts on the folks that live there. So that's something that's important to me, is not just feelings, but also data and data-driven decision making. And so that's one thing that I tend to focus on when decisions come up in front of us.
So how would you then score your impression of, is this commission working rules of good stewardship?
Yeah, I believe we're doing a pretty dang good job at that. I think we work really well together, diverse viewpoints, as Robert alluded to. And as you can see, just in the discussion around the projects out of Port Westward, I think we really consider a lot of the impacts when we want to cite something or when we want to make a decision. And I think we do a fairly good job in terms of governance as well. We typically stay in our lane, don't micromanage a whole lot, try to give the staff leeway in doing the things that they're doing, and just provide the kind of the rails in terms of policy and budget and that sort of thing. But I'm certainly excited to kind of see what others think and if there's room for improvement in those areas.
So Robert, Chip, I did not ask you that specific question through your discussion, but you should share that same opinion that Brian's expressing, is that overall, in spite of all of the challenges that you have, do you feel that this board is operating best it can with good stewardship?
Yes. I mean, never say the best, but this is a great board. I like working with every single person here. I feel like I can call back sometimes. Rather than call the people that agree with me, I talk with Nancy and Chip sometimes. If I think they're gonna have an opposing view, that'll help. I hope they feel open to call me. I think they do. I've heard from them.
So the next question is on governance, which is, it's very similar in question and spirit of the question. Do you have any different feelings about the governance? Are you satisfied overall? You can get up and down. You get into it if you're really feeling right at this point. The governance isn't really the problem. Fairly confident, the real problem is just not enough money to take care of all the things you want to take care of.
You're talking about board governance? Is that what?
Board governance, yes.
See, I'm strongly opposed to that. I've been on this commission when we've had not so great relationships. And right now, I don't see any of that at all. But trying to regulate another elected commissioner is more waste of time, money and effort than I've ever seen. That's for the voters, make things known.
Jim, what do you mean by governance?
Yeah, I was going to try to elaborate a little bit on.
I'm not on the right.
It doesn't mean that you're running the show, because that's what you hire staff to do. So you think of yourselves as policymakers for this organization, and approval of issues that come before you that really are coming from staff. So bad governance would be when, in my perspective, is when commissioners want to get into the weeds and start directing staff individually on things that they think that should happen. That is the beginning of real serious problems within the board, because only the decisions that staff can really listen to is the ones that are approved by the board itself. And individual commissioners going into staff's offices and trying to encourage them to do something that they think is going to work better than what's seen is really a bad thing to move down.
I'm unaware of that.
I have not seen that in many, many, many years here.
We have no problem yelling at Sean, you know. So,
I sure that I do know the prior executive directors. I think it goes back about 3. So I agree with you about Sean's doing a really good job. So.
Because I think, well, with the exception of Chip, everybody comes from private industry. And that has been an eye opener to me. It's like, I can't imagine working with 5 bosses, So I think we have a great respect for that freedom that needs to be there in order for the staff to do what they need to do. And then if anything goes awry, then we deal with it after it happens. But trying to micromanage, I don't see that happening at all in this group of people.
Yeah,
So just to real quick, just expand on the governance issue so that there's some clarity here, is that do you take your roles of individual responsibility seriously? So as the treasurer, as the secretary, as the vice president, the president of the commission. Those are important roles that really guide the whole organization. If you're communicating about those duties and responsibilities, that's a really good thing. It does help some organizations if you have written bylaws that you've discussed, excuse me, you know, of how you see yourselves operating together as a board. I'm guessing that you have such a document or something similar to it, but maybe it needs to be dusted off and take a look at and to see if it still sounds true to you today from the day that it was written, and perhaps not.
We are currently dusting.
Oh, I was gonna say, I haven't seen it since before I was elected, or before I actually got seated, after I was elected. And I was introduced to the bylaws, but you know, once you're in the thick of things, it's like that no longer plays a part in it.
This is the time to address bylaws. It's not when you're in the middle of conflict and you're arguing with each other over specific issues. This is preventative medicine by having the bylaws that make sense to you as an organization. Right.
I was just gonna weigh in on one thing and maybe ask a question of staff, which is kind of a difficult one, but I think we all have our areas of expertise where we lean into certain projects a little more based on what we're knowledgeable about. I personally don't see to the point of micromanaging, but sometimes we each lean into a topic a little bit more. And I would be curious, and this is a hard question, maybe it should be an anonymous question, but how does staff feel about it?
Too late.
Yeah. And maybe I'll ask Sean, and I know that might be hard to answer, but I am curious, do you feel micromanaged at all? Do you feel staff is micromanaged at all?
No, I think you guys do a good job of, I know Nick is, hey, I was gonna talk to Amy, is that okay? I'm like, yeah, that's fine. And doing kind of the chain of command, I feel we have enough examples of some not so good board governance in the region that we can draw upon to not be like in some cases, and that's not casting shade too much, but just, you know, we have those learning opportunities right here in front of us. So, you know, if we flirt into that a little bit, you know, that's my job, I think, to probably right that ship and say that, you want to talk to me about that, I will decide if that's a consensus decision, or is that a project of one person, or do we want to spend staff time on this? So yeah, we'll push back if we need to.
I have a sense that you have good access, Sean. It's a really important issue.
To follow up,
Executive director's position. I love talking to the commission one-on-one. It's very helpful just to understand how they're thinking.
that's one of my points, and a lot of the issues that sometimes I talk with Nick lately about will be Amy might be the best one to handle. So I just want to talk to Amy. But I don't want in any way be seen going around. So a lot of times I CC Sean. I don't want him to have to take time to handle an issue that Amy and I are working on. But I don't want to be doing a whole bunch of talking about policy matters that he's like, what the heck was all this? Or then at least he sees my emails too, and he can shoot back and say, hey, brother, well, maybe she's not the right person, or maybe, you know, the question was,
Let's work on this together.
out of line or something. I want his input, but I like to CC it just so that you're in the loop, but you could choose kind of your level of participation. I don't want to bother you every time we have a question or answer. They're really good about it.
I don't have any problem with access to Sean. He actually called me from his home number the other day. I have that now. I wrote. Have a big mistake. So it's kind of a rookie move, I'm gonna be honest with you, but yeah, so I haven't had any, you know, communication issues, and I feel like every one of us has called each other on a different subject. It's not, you know, I don't
feel like we call and ask and talk to staff questions, not directives. I hope I have never said, hey, you need to do this. If I did, that would be to Sean to say, hey, I'm thinking we need to do this. I've never seen any of these commissioners direct a staff member or even Sean, except we work through the chair.
Is that something, Nick?
No, I just wanted to hope.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah, then it's not like there's any balance really in that department, so. Moving on to, this is one of my favorite ones, is what was your sense of the world's regulatory as an organization? Feel like we're not in too much trouble, and if we are in trouble, that we do find out about it, we do hear about it. If you're out of compliance on any issue, do you feel like that you would be told that we have a problem?
I feel like, yeah, I feel like Elliot, I mean, if certain like our Hope and Talbot sites, I know we're diligently working on that. We have Bob here as well, so we like to blame him, you know, if we have any issues, he's our legal, right? I'm trying to think of, I can't think of, I've only been here 2 years, he's been here longer than me. Think of, but for instance, where I was like, what the heck were we doing there? How did we miss the boat on that? I feel like everybody's pretty on it.
We have an excellent annual ethics presentation that Bob puts on too, so that's always a good reminder and updates for everybody.
I feel like we're very much kept in the loop on any compliance related activities. And probably even more so recently, especially financial related and whatnot, we're given a lot more information in terms of capital planning and audit requirements and requests and whatnot. So I feel really good about our compliance and regulatory.
Well, the guy's presentation on the budget and feature was really, that was clear and easy to understand, and it was really excellent to see that type of direction being given to the commission. So you know what you've got to work with, there's no doubt about that.
And I will say that I feel I feel more comfortable now that Sean's at that helm, because I do think I experienced something different with previous executive directors. And it's always shocking to have somebody from the community come in and tell you something that you should have known that you don't. And I don't think that has happened since Sean has been here.
It's good news.
His number one job is to make us look good.
Don't be surprised.
It's hard sometimes, yeah.
So just by your comments, I'm assuming that the timeliness of compliance reporting is not an issue. And if there is a compliance challenge, you probably already know about it, or you can certainly be assured that staff, just by watching what happened this morning, it's really some good indications. You would be informed if there was a problem that needed to be addressed. So if I'm missing the board, you have to speak up now, because
We knew we were late on the audit. We got an extension with the Secretary of State. We filed in time, so that went awesome.
Statements of economic interest season.
Oh, yeah.
Already done.
I tried and they wouldn't open the window.
this is a good segue to the next section in budget and finance. It's on the next page.
Making those.
Two questions are you sensing that there is now consistency in budgeting and information that's being provided to you that you ultimately approve or not approve a budget? That's what it will ultimately come down to. And then are you comfortable also then with the soundness or the financial principles that are being explained to you make sense to you? So any comments from you as a board?
I would say I am. And I have been. I see Bob Gadotti's online. He did a wonderful job when he was here. Since that time, we've had to tighten things a little bit with a whole bunch of financial obligations. And Guy has really leaned into how that impacts us and the planning needed to accomplish those goals. So I feel really great about that. I don't feel great about all the obligations we have, but the level of knowledge we get and the planning that goes into that, it's been something that's been really great the last couple of years as those things have come up.
Yeah, I can echo some of what Brian said. I feel like everybody's kind of went above and beyond as far as keeping us in the loop, as far as budgeting needs, and we're kind of where we're at. The financial practices, we're working on that all the time. I feel like we absolutely should be always trying to adjust and making sure we're making the right decisions that reflect the budget. Yeah.
We went through a very difficult situation for Sean and found out that things were happening within financial reports that were not being shared. That, of course, is not happening anymore, but it made me highly aware of how vulnerable we are to depending on the information that we receive. You can't micromanage that. The only thing you could possibly do is have a forensic audit every now and then. Of course, those are hugely expensive. And I'm not sure I'm even bringing up anything that has an answer, but I am still very highly aware always that we are vulnerable. If someone decides they want to fudge the numbers, they will find a way to fudge the numbers. And there's really nothing we can do because we are not going to have minute control over that.
If I may, just real quick, Guy is currently talking with a CPA. After his government finance conference, they talked about how people come in and do some spot checking on in between the audits, which is annual. And it's a good practice to do. So he's looking into finding somebody that can come in and take a look at our February financials and look for anomalies and things like that. So it'll cost us a little money, but it's some spot checking and
Good insurance.
yeah.
And I'll chip in. When that event happened, I was really impressed by staff and the response to that and the level of the information that we were given to review going forward to ensure that happen again. It was really unfortunate. That was like right at the start of my first term, I believe. And that we have changed our practices and I think mitigated for that as well, been more thoughtful about other potential risks in that area financially.
Yes. Wouldn't be the first board or organization that ran into a similar problem. Or I tell you how it is a tricky issue. They went through this exact same process with the transportation district. And really spent some time on the financial components because almost all transportation districts the state are hurting terribly. There's never had enough money to take care of the systems. But to find out that the board was totally trusting of its finance director and executive director, only later to find out there's a whole other story you didn't know about.
Yes.
So follow your intuition is what I would say. If something doesn't feel right, smells wrong, speak up. Bring it up into a public meeting saying, we have some questions that we would like to resolve. I don't think that this is going to happen. I think you've dealt with the issues and the problems and made a good decision about how to move forward.
One lesson I'd like to, biggest lesson I think I've learned in 22 years is that audit is irrelevant. An audit means absolutely nothing except that they're complying with all the government rules and reporting regulations. It does zero to assure me there's not things going on here. And whenever I see any financial irregularity stories, I read those things and I follow up with, there's been some around here lately, fire department stuff. They all pass clean audits.
Right.
It's silly things like credit cards and expenditures and things that aren't even audited that bring places down.
No, absolutely. You have to rely on the honesty and the integrity of the people who are boots on the ground. And that's really what it all comes down to. But
Regularly in our staff meetings, we talk about the whistleblower policy too. So if you see something, say something. It's usually at the top of the staff meeting agenda. We do it.
That's what brought the other one down, Nancy, and I can tell you as a staff member who had a guilty conscience.
I wasn't here for any of that.
Guilty conscience.
But you know that right now, not around. That's the only comment I have for it. Not that it would have.
Run into problems. I always find that the resolution that you end up with is much more knowledge about how to prevent something like this happening again. That's the benefit. Going through a difficult thing and discovering what you're discovering. We thought we knew a lot more than what we.
I will say I was very proud of the way we shared it with the public. We did not try and hide it. And of course, we had to be very careful in the way it was presented because of, you know, the sensitivity of it. But we didn't try and just sweep it under the rug.
It's not our money. That's what we like to say.
Exactly.
People's money, so.
But we're going to talk about your relationship of support now with your customers. This is, you know, always a juicy topic because they're.
Hey, as far as the management of service problems, well, we had a tugboat drive through our dock and we did a pretty good job there. I felt like I was very happy with how we dealt with that in a very unfortunate circumstance.
So obviously that was 2 years ago. What are you doing today, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still actually dealing with that. It's not true. So to start off with that, I was very happy with that. All staff involved. You know, Elliot, that's kind of his spot down there. Bashan, the whole staff, Bob, everybody involved. Could have been a lot worse situation. We were about like a 1/4 inch of steel away from still being on Channel 6 News. But as far as how it was dealt with, I was happy with.
Anybody else?
I am very concerned about our airport tenants. And we are being bombarded with gossip, really malicious gossip, extremely malicious, continuous, been going on 2 years, just escalating, always something going on that's disrupting the entire airport community. And that's a very tight-knit community because it's small. And a lot of the people who have private planes there spend a lot of time there. So gossip is very damaging. And I do not think we are doing a good job of containing that and getting to the root of the problem. And it's not because we don't want to. I'm just not sure we know how. And yeah, this concerns me a lot because it is really ruining, in particular, a particular customer. And this cannot stand. So any guidance in that regard, I would definitely appreciate.
So last meeting and watched what was taking place. And I got a sense of what you're talking about. My question to you as a board, though, is if you were to do a survey of your customers, and the survey was specific questions about their confidence in your service ability in response times to if there is a problem, if you were to do that today, what would be your guess that would be the majority decisions of your customers? What kind of a report would they give back to you?
I will just, Nancy and Brian have been around this more than that. It's a very tricky question. I don't think it has to do with service. I think it has more to do with inner politics and relationships out there. I don't know that there's bad service being performed out personally. I mean, but I do think that there is other politics involved that from a 30,000-foot level, you probably don't get to see. Certainly hostility in the meeting. We can all agree on that, but I don't know that it's like, as far as service goes, is, you know, what service would be, you know, running T hangars, airport runway maintenance, which I know is a hot topic because but as far as like the servicing of things goes, I don't know that there's an issue, but there is inner politics as far as that goes. So very difficult situation there. So
Yeah, I would agree. I think from a service standpoint, the marina as well, anytime we need to handle an issue, whether it's weather related or an emergency happens or something like that, the port does a wonderful job, port staff job. I think the area of improvement, I would agree with Nancy, probably feel differently about the cost, but it's just the relationships that we have with some of our tenants, and some of that is out of our control. But and I think we're making improvements on that and looking for ways to build those relationships. And it's not going to be something that just happens overnight.
Well, I'm sorry, but thank you I feel like I've ripped the scab off because this is literally keeping me awake at night. This is such an onerous problem. If you were to ask any of our other tenants outside the airport, I think they would say we do a wonderful job of maintenance. That is not true of the people at the airport. Constant nitpicking, constant. It never ends. Every single meeting that we have with them, the continuous communications to staff about this not being right and that not being right. It's a cancer. And it is ruining our businesses and our relationship with the businesses. And I don't see us taking any steps to actually go in and deal with this face to face, person to person, as well as within our ability to control such things as rumors in policy. We're kind of at a loss. Everyone's at a loss. How do we stem the tide on this?
It's give you a little bit of insight. Being on the board of directors of the Department of Aviation, you travel the state and visit the communities that have airports. Communities have state airports, and we frequently. It's rare that we do not have a customer of any of airports coming to the Department of Aviation saying, we've been complaining about this problem and nobody's listening to us. So that begins a process of, well, as an individual, my first reaction is like, what caused that problem? And how did this come about? How did this happen? What you're describing is a group of people who aren't happy, and someone or a group of people are ringing the bells and trying to bring attention to it and change things to the way that they think that it can be. If I was ever to see a pattern of what this actually happens, I would say that the history of the development of airports in the state of Oregon it started out, almost all airports started because of military activity from World War II. So we all have a lot of hangars and infrastructure problems that are residual from that war, and not having enough money in order to take care of the properties that the federal government handed over to our local communities. That's a real common theme throughout the state. So what you have to do, I think, as the board members, is that when you've got complaints of people that are complaining about the process, or particularly staff, then you're an advisory board. You put on that cap for shortly. You're not wading into the issues themselves, because it'll drive you crazy. But just constantly be assured that staff is aware of what the complaints are, and are giving you reasonable explanations that they're doing the best that they can with the resources that they have available to them. And you can't give folks what you don't have to give. They may insist upon greater repairs and more access to the biggest issue I can see in airports is access from off-site, from their planes getting onto the airport. So through the fence is what's used within the terms of airports. Is you have a hangar that's outside of the fence, you want to get into the fence. You want to get your plane to where you want it to be. When these airports were developed decades ago, there was not the oversight that we're seeing today from the federal government, from the FAA, and from the state, and the land use and safety issues and federal government requirements are all parts of the problems, that you're experiencing today with, we want more and you're not giving it to us. And we're not happy with it and we're tired of complaining about it. That is a common theme that I've seen through many, many airports. As a commission, it's difficult because there's only so much money in the budget, and you have to make wise decisions. How is that best use? And sometimes some departments, some groups, just don't have it to give what they need. Sometimes thick skin works, Nancy. Sometimes it's, I want you to know that I'm hearing what you're saying. But we have confidence in our staff that will help resolve to the best of our abilities with what we have to work with.
By the way, Jim does work for the consulting services arm of SDAO. He could actually potentially, if we needed, help us with some of these issues if we contract with them. I'm sure you're probably saying, but we're not gonna be able to fix some of these issues today, some of this stuff, right?
Right. All right, let's keep
We
moving.
can use them in the future if we need to.
And at the end, we'll talk a little bit about here's how it can help you moving forward. So, because I'm already hearing things that, well, we could provide some guidance and assistance. Right, so let's talk about your staff next. Is that overall, what would you say as a commission, individual commissioners, is what's your impression of the morale of your workforce today?
We kind of, speaking for myself here, I mean, and circling back to where we kind of started, I mean, kind of dealing with Sean direct as far as that goes. And I have interaction with some staff, but I wouldn't say all. Like I don't, there's 7 or 8 staff back there I say hello to and have very little interaction with. So, and they seem to be pleasant when I do, but I mean, I'd be scratching if you told me to ask exactly what they do on a day to day. So, if that makes sense, that's just speaking for myself there. So.
Yeah, it is a dangerous, try to get into those weeds again, is that an individual commissioner think, well, why are they doing that work?
Yeah,
It's the whole point of that. That's when you should stop as a commissioner. So if you have a concern, go to Sean. So.
That's just the approach we have a director and, and I deal with Amy a little bit on some projects. She's our deputy director and Lindsay on some things, but as far as, day-to-day stuff, like I don't do too much on that stuff. So.
All right, moving on. So morale, what's your sense of the morale of the organization overall? Nancy's thinking, Chip?
I think good. I mean, it's hard to tell, but, hopefully we don't scare them. And I don't think we do. Yeah, I think good.
Hard question to answer for myself there as well. I'm in here one day a month sometimes. So, somebody could put on a pretty good show for one day. So, and I don't think people are. Interaction with, I'm not personally around it. I mean, a couple days a month sometimes. So everybody again seems to be pleasant.
Staff love me, just.
See,
I think the lack of, we don't have employees coming to us, making complaints or anything like that. Morale seems pretty good. Work climate seems pretty good. Sure, there's always little things that come up. I know we've had to make some tough budget decisions at times, and that hasn't left certain areas of the organization happy, but I don't see that being like a overall issue, an enduring issue, I guess.
It's a delicate balance for an executive director to give access to the commission to their employees. So for an executive director, no, I don't want you to do that. I want you to come to me. For me, that would be a little bit of a warning sign. I would be a little bit concerned as a commissioner. As an executive director, I'd say, please, if you have something that you'd like to share with the commissioner, help yourself. I mean, they can always come to a board meeting if they wanted to say something. But to get into the weeds with them and say, well, tell me about your problems and tell me what's going on and how did this happen and what did she say and what did he do and all of those things. Those are warnings, so don't do that. I would say that's stepping into dangerous territory.
I think we have really good boundaries, and I think they have really good boundaries. I mean, I get the sense that everyone is pretty savvy in our organization about the relationship between staff and commission.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, it feels good.
I think it's best to think the best of people And once in a while you get disappointed.
Right.
Move into those relationships and think, this is gonna be good, a good working relationship. Talk about the management of employee performance. Can you tell me how that happens? How does management?
Annual performance evaluations.
That was to Sean or Sean to?
Well, both. Let's start with the staff first and then we can get to the executive director. But
Yes. So start with staff or executive director first, which one?
either one, whichever one.
So we obviously evaluate Sean, and we do quarterly evals now as well, right? Because
It's an annual and a mid-year check-in.
yes, just for that, just so he can. And we started doing that with our HR department. We just did one. So he can kind of get the sense of what the commission feels and what kind of job he's just, in all fairness, so that way he can make adjustments and, if need be. So.
Okay, let's start with that evaluation process of your oversight to the executive director. What tools do you have that you would use to evaluate whether or not the executive director is doing a good job? Do you have a work plan that he has? Do you have any goals? Do you have goals?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's obviously an evaluation. So we kind of go through that. Goals and accomplishments, future goals, that sort of thing. We each meet with Sean one-on-one.
And then we go over it with him. But it's a pretty boilerplate type of assessment we put together with an HR department, and we've kind of tuned it a little bit. We kind of, for a while there was like this 1 through 5 grading. That's a very rough thing for somebody to look at. Because a 3, you're doing great technically, and nobody's ever really a 5. So we kind of moved away. It's just a hard. I didn't like it. Right? Everybody's a 5, right? So we've kind of morphed that to more feedback. It's kind of the general direction of commission, and without having in front of me. But it's a pretty fair. I feel like we get what we need out of it.
I feel like we put a lot of thought into that.
Yeah.
One thing that we added was the mid-year check-in, because, when you're doing an evaluation as a manager with staff, you meet with those employees all the time. The commission, we don't have that same level of communication and opportunity to be checking in with Sean every single week on that sort of thing. So we set aside some specific times mid-year to check in and make sure if there's any adjustments, we communicate those things. So communicate what's going well, if goals have shifted, priorities have changed, that sort of thing. I think that's something that I've been really proud of the last couple of years, changes we've made to engage with Sean more in that way.
So does Sean know what it is that he's being judged on for his performance?
Yeah.
How would you describe that?
Describe the process or
Describe the process.
this time around, we have our template sheet, and Sean is aware of it's something similar. It's similar to
Very
this.
similar.
It's similar to this. And then commission, I sent it out, and then commission made comments, and then I worked with HR, Sarah, we call her HR Sarah, and worked with her the best I could to send a clear message to Sean. It was actually kind of hard. It can be challenging because what Nancy maybe thinks on something and what I think may be the same, but maybe Brian thinks different. So, and you don't want to send a mixed message to someone, for a clear path. So there were some things on that I didn't care for, but 4 other people did. And that was kind of the direction. So we did our best to kind of mold that so it was a clear message.
I would like to say, in the years I've been on here, a lot of years, and the years I was the chair, this last couple of years, and this year especially, is the best I've ever seen at the board coming together and giving the executive director the information he needs. And it was brutal on Sean, not the results were brutal, but the process. I mean, it was a long meeting that went into every aspect of your job, everything you do. And some of it was from previous years when we would just kind of send notes to the chair and they'd fill out a form and send it in. So we got to address a lot, and I'm sure it was helpful to him. It was helpful to everybody on this board. All the opinions were expressed. That is an area that I would give a 5 to the board and the HR person, and especially next leadership, to get Sean what he needed and Sean's receptiveness to it. That was just, it's always challenging, and I thought this one has been done very well.
I think that was the first review that I handled. Again, it's very hard because you know, again, Nancy's opinion on something may be different than Chip's, and Chip's might be different than mine. So what I did was I sent the sheet out, went through it the best I could, spoke with everybody individually on the phone, and kind of relayed kind of where thoughts were on things, and completed the form, sent it out to everyone. You know, there was questions and spots, rightfully so, and then we got it over to Sean.
So is this evaluation based upon a document of expectations at the beginning of the season or a year?
Yes, commission expectations. Job description, basic goals, exactly, yes.
So is Sean a contract in an employment agreement with the board?
It's on our radar. Not currently, but it has been brought up. It's in the very near future, we will be working on an employment agreement.
I believe this process was a step that
Yes.
take for entering into that sort of contract.
I often stuff, but this process is a little good segue into what we're now discussing about executive directors, oversight of the commission of its executive director. So having specific goals and expectations for a coming year gives direction. But there's also tools that become available when you have a contract with the person, and it takes a lot of the emotion out of the relationship. The contract helps both parties understand that really where I find that it's most helpful is everybody's going to leave at some point.
Exactly.
You want that departure to be as meaningful as possible, as productive as possible, and less stressful. Contract can bring you into that, into that position. Shots. I would highly recommend it. I've personally been through this for myself, and contract is always better than living by the seat of your pants and not knowing what's coming next. I think it's especially important for the executive director to have. So I have been asked in the past by other districts to say we need some help in developing an agreement with our executive director, and I'm happy to help this organization get to that point. That process just, I realize that you're talking about it now. For what I have seen to be really successful is a facilitated conversation with the board itself is what would you like to get out of this contract and what are the components? This can all be, but what I'm describing right now can easily be discussed in a workshop, could be discussed in a regular commission meeting. And in fact, with Oregon law, you cannot talk about the salaries and the benefits in an executive session. It has to be done in the public. So the facilitation process helps you say, what are the components that you want to see within this agreement? And Sean would be a participant in those discussions. So you end up with a template. Here are the things that we really want to have in this employment agreement. And if you want to get to that point down the road, I'm happy to help you. But that end result is then delivered to the port's attorney and say, okay, here's the primary components that we want to see within the agreement. Can you please draft up then an employment agreement for us?
I have multiple of them. Sean sent over. I've read them over. They were all kind of, I won't use the word boilerplate, but pretty boilerplate stuff. They all were very similar. Certainly legal will need to review it, and we're going to have a long discussion about what each individual thinks, and to do that. But it looked to me, that, like you said, could be something pretty easily done. So.
If not me, I think that it's really important that you have an independent person.
Yes.
Yes.
That listens to what each of you say.
Yes.
About what you want to have. And that ends up with a much more valuable product and it actually can sail through pretty quickly. So that's a task for all, and add that to my notes. Forgot to tell you is that what happens at the end of this whole process is I go away for about a week and think through all the things that we've said and talked about today and to provide you as the commissioners, staff, council. Here's my recommendations and here's my reflection on what I heard and the steps that I think of that are good. Suggestions, things that you may want to take a look at and address. So, all right.
I was gonna add to that. I think that's a great idea to have Jim involved in this thing. You know, I have a contract, but I'm a lawyer, so I was able to negotiate my side of it, and then the board had a lawyer. Not to have Sean have to pay for his own lawyer to do that. And if you have experience in this and have done, you've done this assessment, seems like that he's perfect, really.
Good.
Great.
Progress. All right, so employee performance. So now moving down the chain of command and employees. What's your sense as a commissioner? How does that process work? Maybe old timers who've been around a while, there's changes in that process?
I don't even know what the process is
Okay,
for the employee performance.
that's good.
I'm not involved in it. So, I mean, it's, me personally, as far as staff, being employees, that's Sean's department. If there's a problem there for him to handle.
Let's start with fundamentals. Are there annual performance reviews for your staff?
Yes.
Check.
Same mid-year and annual, same approach.
So within that approach, is it, I'm going to presume just because I know Sean better, I'm assuming it's a conversational opportunity of, tell me how you like your job and tell me the things that you feel like you've done really well and tell me about the things that are troubling you. And what kind of things would you think that you'd like to see changed? Salary, for some reason, comes up frequently.
Surprise, surprise.
Surprised. So could you describe how those reviews take place for the staff?
Yeah, well, we'll look at the goals set at the annual, like the mid-year, and see how we're doing against those and adjust it for any new goals that we want to have going forward. I did away with the self-evals a couple of years ago because I hadn't been through that exercise several times. It's an interesting opportunity to highlight things, or I mean, it's good. I encourage folks to do it, just keep track throughout the year of things that you've done, and in case I miss them, but talk about the good things that have been done and then things that we need to work on.
How would you say overall that your staff are happy with the current process of evaluation of annual or twice a year review times?
I would have to ask. Yeah, I mean, I think it seems fair to have it twice, but as far as knowing on it, I guess I don't know for certain.
I love doing evaluations with the staff because it's an opportunity for me to listen to what their concerns and their worries are. And to not have an opportunity to express those is a future bigger problem coming their way. So that's a good idea, Sean. I think if you have a group setting, in fact, with the staff, should we make, is there a need to make changes into the procedures that we use for employee evaluations? And I don't have any great pearls of wisdom to that because it's different from organization to organization.
We did. We tweaked it here a year ago, more working with the HR person and internally to come up with better questions, things that we thought were going to be more valuable for us as managers to solve the reviews.
So forgive me for putting you on the spot, just a pinch, but to ask the employees, so how do you like your review process or that process of evaluating my performance? what would you say? We're doing really good. I like how it's happening, or it needs some modifications to it.
I like this. We have a couple of staff members in here. We can, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so.
I think we can always do better too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, right.
The other question,
You like it, and if you.
Yeah, yeah, right.
You might say, well, it depends on how you score me, how much I like it.
I think it brings up the question of what options are available. I mean, I only know our system or any system that under which I have worked.
Yeah.
But I'm sure as years go on, there's lots of new inventions and new ways of doing things.
Sure.
I'm not sure I'm at all aware. So, and I wonder how aware Sean is.
Well, we've been working with HR Sarah. We have a consultant, HR person, and she's been very helpful, I feel. With,
And I drafted the forms for the process, but I think that people have been, they will come and say this doesn't really work for me, so they've been pretty open about that. And we've made changes, like you said, based on that.
Bringing back the questionnaire shoebox out there. You better watch out.
Suggestion box.
Suggestion box, yep. Careful what you wish for. Right.
Oh, we've had them before and nobody ever uses them, right?
Next question on the list is a little bit tricky because as I'm listening to you talk about your relationship with Sean being really good and, being careful about how you have conversations with the staff. But the question is from a perspective of the commission, do you feel that the jobs that people have are in alignment with their skills and abilities?
I would say that I think it's a shame that we have required all of our employees to wear many hats. So you cannot expect them to be experts in every single thing that they end up having to deal with. I think that's the biggest issue that we have of not being able to increase our staff.
Yeah, I often tell folks here, they don't really know how good they have it working for a small port as opposed to working in the contracts section of Port of Portland or different things that we do get to do a lot of different things, which keeps the job very interesting, but it also makes it challenging to become experts in any one thing.
It is a mixed blessing because if your job is to be a lathe operator and that's all you ever get to do is be a lathe operator, what's the point of having, your review should say, are you performing your function safely and quickly?
Yeah.
Within a port, the beauty of working for ports, and I've been working with ports most of my working career, is that you do get to wear multiple hats and that when you leave, you carry with you then all of the experience that you would have that you can get more of within a port district than most any other organization.
I guess to answer it, I know I'm a broken record here, but I mean, I think we have some staff in spots they probably shouldn't be, but it's Sean's deal. And so I just always if there's staff in spots, you got to give Sean time with his eval to either adjust that or whatever. So even if I think that somebody's not in a spot they need to be, which I think is a possibility, I mean, that's up to him.
Yeah.
That's his staff. He runs that. We completely stay out of it. That's why we have these reviews and it wouldn't be, proactive for me to, voice that to certain staff because I might not have all the information. I don't know. You may have them there for a reason.
I was going to chime in and say, we do have a limited view into that, but we have communicated to Sean in various ways that's putting people in the right spot is a really important skill for the executive director to have, and that we support him in making changes if needed, given how important that is. I don't know if that's how others feel, but that's how I feel. And, I think there's always going to be opportunities for that when you have a large enough staff, right? Might have somebody in the perfect spot and somebody else might be doing part of their job that really fits their skill set and they have to take on something else due to circumstance. And constantly evaluating that and finding the right role is not an easy thing. But hopefully Sean feels empowered to make those changes as needed.
I would
I think that's boiled down to having clarity with the job description and clarity with like job expectations for the manager. And having those documents or having those conversations is really the key to a successful work group.
Yeah.
Well, similar to what Brian said, but I've expressed, I know personally concerns, not concerns, but just comments as an outsider. So I view myself as a board member to individual employees. Is this working for you? But he has come back sometimes and said, "Oh, look at that." And sometimes it said, "Look, I deal with this person every day and this is the right person for the job." I'm gonna have faith in him that I accept that because I'm not gonna take my 5 or 10 minute interaction with them over his experience. But one of the things I think that would make me mark this yellow is it's not exactly on target, but it might be on this next box, but it would be helpful for me, and this is on me, but it would be helpful for me to understand the roles and responsibilities of the employees. There are the top leaders, I understand, but below that, I'm not as clear as I could be. We've added some people lately and I need to do that. We've talked briefly about it, but I've never gotten anywhere, and I need to understand what each person's function is. Pretty hard to say if they're doing a good job if you don't even know what they're supposed to be doing.
Yes, it's the other thing too is I don't, so he just had a review and we all had our input on it. And I feel like you have to give him time to try to fix some of these issues because some of them aren't easily fixed.
Right.
And what I think is a no-brainer thing, there may be a lot more to it. So I don't like to, because there wasn't something I immediately wanted, jump him on and say, "Hey, what the hell's going on here? How come this isn't," because he,
How come you haven't already done
yeah,
that?
I just don't think it's fair. I mean, and in a few months, when he has his other review of stuff, if we all discuss it again, and I just feel like that's the time to do it and let him be his own situation and manage the best to his ability. Maybe I'm doing that wrong. I don't know. So, I mean,
That's perfect.
yeah.
One of my, no, I think it's fine. Is to policies and procedures. First question, families. Sounds so they do you have administrative policies that you could?
I think there's a real push to evaluate and update those and maybe get on a schedule in doing so. That's something that Nancy and I both talked about at the SDAO
At the
annual
SDAO.
conference, actually. And there's been discussion. We already update policies from time to time, but I think there's maybe a want on some of the commissioners' part to have that, on a schedule, essentially.
I'm not sure I quite followed you on that last statement.
Reviewing schedule, maybe.
Oh, that's what you're.
I just, there might be law changes, legislature changes, that sort of thing. Maybe our business practices are different now, so the policy needs to adjust. Doing things a certain way for a really long time, and we've had this policy for 20 years, and it says different than what our actual practice is. So I think just reviewing those things, getting them up to date, and then also checking in is something that we feel is important. At least I do.
I'd love to get a summer retreat scheduled where we can do just that second meeting, talk about vision and policy and figure out what updates we're going to do.
Honestly, how much I love summer retreats and all that, but I would say this. Every board I've ever served on is behind on taking their SDAO model policies, reviewing them. And I've tried many times, and I chair a board right now that's trying to do 2 or 3 policies a meeting, whatever. It's a disaster. It's too hard. You have other things to do. It doesn't get done. I think retreat is the only way it works. And the last time that we did one effectively here was a retreat at Columbia River PUD. And we had them ahead of time and kind of reviewed them, and we made some changes and mostly adopted SDAO's recommendations, but we got the whole thing done. That is the way to do it.
We just did a rewrite of a draft of our personnel manual with SDAO template information in it. Bob's been spearheading that. We'll bring that to you eventually.
First off, that summer retreat at the PUD sounds awful. You're not going to get me there. So you need to find a better spot to go to retreat. So you have to go anywhere but PUD. Yeah.
Dang it. Nobody got in trouble for that.
I couldn't even,
Another count if it's offshore.
I would lean heavily on Bob and staff on this, and I certainly couldn't agree more. One of these things that we should definitely review more, and I know little about. So, I
You
mean,
could just start with just a list of what policies you've got.
yeah.
Just, oh, I didn't know we had a policy.
Yeah, I'm sure we have them. I'm sure they're there. I mean, violated frequently. Sure. Yeah, so right. But no, I don't. I heavily lean on staff for that. And if I had a question, I would ask Sean, Bob, you know, and go from there.
It's gonna be the year of the policy.
It's the year of the policy, yeah. And
But I was gonna say, we did that commission direction, we adopted the rotating president idea that the commission wanted, and that's now in practice, and I think it's a pretty good rule, as it turns out, so.
Just be glad you're not on the school board because every meeting, there's like 3 or 2 or 4 that they gotta look at and update. Here's the suggested language.
let's hold on to the school board for a while. So, yeah.
There's a whole lot of reasons.
Under things that never happened.
Presidency based on person that has not done it for the longest goes to the top of the list.
How you became the president?
By default, nobody wanted me. I just kind of fell in, right?
I'll step back.
Yeah, they're like, go ahead. No, I actually like it. It's kind of makes everybody, should say make, but gives everybody an opportunity to do it. And it's been working fine. I feel like it's not.
When's the last time the board has been to a SDAO board training workshop? Or have you been to a SDAO board?
Do they do, is that?
I went to one. Was that a year ago?
Or is it a fully separate?
I went to one a year ago.
You're thinking of the board duties session?
Yeah, there's a handful of different SDAO.
That one, if you see me out there, somebody behind me, pistol.
We could arrange that. I mean, so, right. Yeah, right. Good luck. Yeah.
So we kind of get close to the end here. Is your sense of the efficiency of staff in the work system? Is there things that seem to be glaring to you? This is odd. This should be, look at this a little bit closer.
I don't know that I've seen anything that was odd. There may be some things I don't like, but that would go, you know, we would let Sean know via review or something that the commission thought we bring to him. And again, not to be a broken record, but you know.
Can you dive in that just a little bit without spilling all the beans?
I can add some.
Yeah.
I think we're trying to get a little bit better understanding at a number of sites as to what our expenditures are and how that relates to allocations of time and that sort of thing. And you know, so we're kind of going through some of that at the arena.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe expanding that to other sites just to get an understanding of like what our revenues are and what our expenses are with labor being a part of that.
And if we need to take a hard pivot to do something different, if there's a major hemorrhage, quote unquote, of money in a certain situation, how we as a commission can do better to kind of, you know, fix an issue. So, and some of these things, as you're well aware, you know, are, you know, we're going to lose some money on some of it. If it's a small amount of money, we can be okay with it. If it's a lot, then it's harder, right? So
I think that'll help us understand efficiency. It's kind of a blind spot a little bit at this point, I would say. And I know that information is hard to get. We don't necessarily have the software that allows for it. There's been a lot of discussion around that, but we're working towards that goal.
great.
So I only have a couple more questions, but before this, I know must be getting close to enough time to move on to whatever the rest of your life is today. Are there questions you wish that I had asked? Well, as we've been talking, there's something that we should be talking about that I didn't bring.
You think you could bring in like 4 or 5 major businesses in? Grain terminal, how are you at dredging? Yes, right, yeah. I can't think of anything, but I'm sure there, you know,
Yeah. There was we had met a few years ago where I thought there was an opportunity for some export grain passing through running a group from Korea, sorry, to look at what Western properties.
Mhm.
But the timing's bad because that was towards the beginning of COVID. So,
I would think the question, Jim, might be, how do we think the board, how does the board think they compare to other elected boards?
in terms,
now,
We look
5. Yeah, right.
by default.
if it was them, Sean, you'd have to elaborate on your question just a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't know that it's a good question.
Well, it is a good question.
Comparisons in general.
Maybe compare.
Yeah. Value.
Are we doing
What we're supposed to be doing and whether we're actually
Yeah.
doing it. I'm sure we could make some jokes about.
Thanks, yeah.
But that's my 2 cents on that.
I could kind of give you an answer just from the results of this conversation. In comparison to other organizations that have performed this exact same thing, our guys are doing really good.
We are.
And, I'm not recognizing any trouble spots that we should be concerned in. You're talking with each other politely and listening well. You're active listening is impressive. Your relationship with executive director is good. There haven't been any glaring issues that have popped up at this point. Of our categories that we talked with, so I'm not missing something. Did any of you see in that category on the first page where it's good, caution, or danger? Do you see any items that raise your? This is a problem one that I either glazed over or we didn't get into enough discussion.
I was very caught by that very first question. What is good stewardship? What is it? Yeah, I'm not sure I can answer that.
And I think that's a discussion for this board because of your specific needs and responsibilities. It's different than any other board. It's different than any other organization. So you decide what's good to stewardship. That's why the question came up is, what is your sense? It's your primary responsibility for the taxpayers to be good stewards of the port's assets.
I think for me, a lot of this is in the good category, and for the most part, things that are in the caution category are already things that we're working on and making progress on.
What were the cautionary things?
Oh, I'd have to go back through it.
Just the overall regulatory compliance. I mean, we should always be cautioned by that. I feel like we should always be not feeling like we have complete and total control of that all the time, because that's an ever changing.
And I would have marked some cautions, but not necessarily that the port is cautioned, it's that I don't know enough. And I never want to be cocky enough to say, yeah, I've done that, and it's bit me, where we say, we're great at that. And you look and, well, no, we're maybe not so great.
We're mediocre, right?
So that is, yes,
I would have no
caution.
heads. I would have some yellows that are maybe even personal to say, hey, Commissioner Kaiser, you need to know more about this.
Yeah, we just talked about one, soundness of administrative policies. I think is a little bit of a blind spot as to what those look like and what our practices are. We're constantly evaluating efficiencies.
We'll send the regulatory stuff up. I assume they take good care of it. So far, that's been borne out. That's scary. Problem. I said on the regulatory compliance side of it, I have great faith in Sean and your team that's doing it. That would surprise me if that's where our problem crops up.
Tricky question because regulations change all the.
My gosh, yes.
Or you discover when you weren't.
It's not, we changed that law last year.
How does a little port like we are, with 19 people in the whole organization, how do you keep up with things that are coming down the pike? Every time the legislature sits down, here comes a whole new slew of things that we need to be aware of, and are we?
Well, and that's the beauty of the OPPA Legislative Committee, because we meet every week during session, and every Friday, originally for some, but we meet, we talk about the ones that we're monitoring, we're supporting, and the ones that we're opposing.
That's great.
Go through with Mark Landauer. And he's really good about, these are kind of port adjacent, but not necessarily directly, that we want to watch to make it a League of Oregon Cities are watching this one and it may affect us. So
I would comment that SDAO provides a real resource in that in regards to labor practices and other employment related things. So I feel like we have a lot of resources there to.
If you're not subscribed to SDAO's newsletter, which comes out pretty frequently, these topics that we're discussing are embedded frequently into the newsletter. So SDAO does a really good job at the staff level of keeping the rest of the organization up to speed on possible legislative changes. And work really close with Mark on issues that are pertinent, particularly to ports. So there are resources, but if you're not getting the newsletter, you're missing out on some, good information. And it's easy. Just go to the website and register for it. So.
It's a very valuable organization.
Yeah. I was so happy to have the opportunity to be asked, would you like to become one of our senior consultants? And it was, this would be really fun. I don't have a board to report to.
Well, we belong, and there are a jillion organizations that we could belong to. In my estimation, SDAO and PNWA are the two most valuable that we rely on, and really gives us so much more than our membership reflects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we're close to wrapping up, I did have one general feedback item. I would have loved, and I know it kind of nice to have a conversation and just be off the cuff. I would have loved to have had this beforehand. To put a little more thought into it.
We're smiling because you brought up it. This is an interesting point that I raised with SDAO. Over during the last time, and I knew that Sean wanted me to come and do this. I wanted to do what I've been doing in the past, was give this to you ahead of time so that you had some time to think it over. This was designed as a document. I found out later on that it's designed to get your spontaneous response to the questions. And there is value to that.
Yeah.
So
I can see both sides of it.
well, and that's why at our next meeting of twice a year, the consultants come together and we discuss pertinent issues to us doing a better job for what we do. And this is going to be on that topic. Should we give this document ahead of time with instructions of what do you do? So
You don't have to give the document out, save the surprise factor if you want, but give the list of areas for us to think about. Because I don't like having to sit here and think about compliance issues that I haven't thought about and then give a reasonable answer what I think. Well, when after the meeting, I'd like to read through the list. So even just a letter with the general topics or something would give you more information.
So now that I've done it both, works both ways. There is a value of the spontaneity. It's really good. I want to hear what you're. Usually the first things you say are the first things that are on your heart that you want to get off your chest. So I do see the values to that, but we'll see how this.
You can, if you have time to word it so that everything sounds, everything's bland and you won't get the same response as you do. Yeah. So I see what you're saying.
This to be what you guys are saying, exactly the issues that we're seeing as the consultants. You could do it either way. It kind of depends on the consultant whether they can handle doing it either way.
Well, and what's interesting is, have you ever gone through this before with SDAO? You have. Okay. See, of course, I don't think the rest of us have. And so now, if you were to come back, 2 years from now, we'd have a better idea. It wouldn't be that same kind of spontaneity. And so, yeah, I can see some value in having it done more than once every 10 years or whatever.
But is this different today than what you've experienced in the past?
I mean, it's a similar format, but I don't even remember the topics. It's been a long time. My observation is, not to take away from anything you're doing, you're doing a great job, but this board has become a better board, and not that we were a great board anyway, but through when we have 5 people discussing something, and Sean's evaluation did a lot for this board, because we all had to kind of agree how to do things to get a message to him. This discussion today has made us a better board. Bios and all that, so anytime the board gets a chance to have a directed conversation, it's good for us.
Yep, I agree. Really, really valuable.
And when you get my report, because it'll go to each of you, you'll have my contact information. If you have questions or concerns, feel free to give me a call. Just need somebody to ask a question, but I'm available. So happy to help in any way that I can.
It's a pleasure meeting you and thank you for your time.
Yes.
For this opportunity.
And what an interesting background you have had. And so like, wow, yeah.
I love it.
And you're not the infamous Astoria Board Director.
Oh, yes, there certainly are. Word of moral comes to mind. Yeah.
Had watched Pier 2 burn when I was in high school. Just happened to fall into Astoria that day.
Oh, wow.
That was a big fire, big mess, yeah.
What caused the fire?
Pier 2, I don't remember what.
Well, Jim and I met early on in my port tenure here, when Pat Trapp was still here. And I remember, my experience with Pat Trapp was, utmost respect. And I met Jim and I thought, wow, they hire well around here for these port directors. This is good because he was very, had, high integrity and, he had a challenging board that he was dealing with that I happened to have some direct experience with through some association meetings. And every time I saw Jim, I thought, how are you doing? And he weathered through all that and his integrity was really good. His staff respected him. And it was really nice to get to know him back then. And great that he's working for SDAO, helping us ports and other districts out. So good place for him.
I know nothing about
With you, so
Yes,
it's an enjoyable experience for me.
weird.
good. That's great.
Thank you so much for your time and the opportunity.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Jim. About that later. Hey, into the report.
Executive Director, we're good.
A little tune up to it. You have my calendar. I did hand that out. I'll definitely send that out. We wanted to highlight a couple of things that have happened in the past month or so. Some of these things you know about because some of you were there. Some of them you don't know about. So the next slide. Next. Perfect. Nancy, I know you're very well plugged into this because you're attending the not only the monthly membership call with PNWA, but there's also the Inland Ports Navigation Group call, which is the arm of PNWA, if you will, that is tackling the litigation with the Snake River Dam issue. That is one to keep monitoring. Judge Simons handed down his ruling and basically told the defendants and the plaintiffs that they need to work together for a solution, which had them all shaking their heads. But
What do they think causes a lawsuit?
I think our esteemed counsel here says, I've seen this playbook. He knows what's happening there with Judge Simons. But make the parties work together to come up with their own solutions. And then we're going to Mission in April, a little later this year. We'll miss the cherries blossoming and looking forward to Bob and myself and Lindsay going back. We're getting meetings lined up with the agencies that we have grant applications in with. The association lines up all sorts of meetings with the Corps and different folks that we have come to us. It should be a really fruitful mission this time, and we have some things to talk about. So that'll be really nice. The legislative committee I mentioned, we meet weekly during the session. It's very, very valuable for us to know what we need to be tracking and pushing. And if we need to go down to Salem, Mark will tell us, let's get some folks down here. We're going to testify. And we'll keep monitoring that in the next session, which will be a long one. On Monday, Representative Bonamici's coming to the office. They reached out. She's coming through. And doesn't have time for a tour necessarily, but we'll do like a visual Google tour. And she's been out to Port Westward not long after, I think that Trap was still here. So she's familiar with that site. One of these days, we'll try to arrange something. We get them out on a tug or something. We can look at the facility from the riverside.
I toured Representative Bonamici at Port Westward. Paula and I did. Got a good view of it when just before she was elected, like a couple weeks.
Okay.
Came around the beaver site, and came back around, the deer walked out in the road, and so we had to stop and wait. It's like, nice job, boys, cute it. But we spent with Paula, Paula's pretty detail oriented, so she got a really thorough view of the dock and went out on the dock and took, so she's seen it.
So far, the missions that Nancy and I have been on together, she was the one delegate that's met with us every time. So
Right.
that was really, I mean.
She's very, very
I
professional.
talked to her about her husband a little bit.
No, do that.
Is her husband the one who, is that the,
Simon, federal judge, Michael Simon.
and he did the Snake River?
Mm-hmm.
It was he. I wondered, okay.
Slide, please. Yeah, I got a chance to meet gubernatorial candidate Chris Dudley, which was really interesting. I found him to be very intelligent, personable. I have a hard time believing he might unseat somebody, but a Democrat in the state, but he did really well last time he ran. We shall.
Multnomah County,
Yeah.
leading.
Yeah, he was winning on a Tuesday and lost on Thursday, he says. So you got to stay engaged in those. The town hall was really good. Thank you, Nancy, for attending that as well. We had Lindsay and Lacey and I were there. They set it up, but it was great. It's always a good chance to talk to folks and we get some really good conversation out of it. A lot of good friendlies and people that have questions and want to know more. The coalition, we actually are meeting again next week, I believe it is, next Wednesday. That's the group of folks, non-electeds, that we get together and initially to talk about, make sure we're not talking past each other on projects or different things coming up that our entities are doing. Very valuable group, especially right now with the dissolution of CET. We've been very engaged with how programs have moved around, and we'll where they'll stand when the dust is settled. So. Went down to the Entrepreneurial Network Northwest Innovation Hub launch down in Astoria, which was, wasn't sure if it was going to be a good use of time, and it actually ended up being a really good use of time. Some of the networking that I was able to do down there and folks I've talked to. Sometimes it's stuff that you'll never come to fruition, but it's just sometimes knowing that that's an option, some things we can do. So that was a good use of time there. Next slide, please. Chamber of Commerce annual breakfast in Rainier. That was a nice event. Brian was there as well. And we had some good eats and got to hear from some folks. BDIC annual meeting was on the 17th. Elliot will have some notes typed up from that, but the big takeaway from that is they formed a bylaws committee that Bob is a member of. You have a question, Robert?
No, I just meant to go there. I apologize.
Oh, the Rainier Chamber?
No, the BDIC. I want to really follow through with them on the bylaws committee and get that.
It's been stood up. There's 6 members of it. Bob is one of the members of the committee. He actually drafted what we proposed for them to include. They had a lot of stuff that needed updated, and then we had the ads that we were looking for. So that'll get reviewed and I'm sure negotiated and drafted in the coming months. Elliot said their plan was next March to potentially adopt. So this committee will be stood up and doing some work throughout the year here. So. The airport history talk went far better than exceeded my expectations so much.
Yeah.
Very engaged group. I will say a lot of older people, but not all. Good questions, good stories. We're going to definitely do some of that again. And the idea I had was to take some of our history for sites to teach people about the port. Whether we do one for South County, we talk about some of the legacy sites and why the port ended up with them and why we're spending money. And but that's a good way to engage folks with the history aspect, because people are always interested in
Lots of pictures. Pictures makes a big difference. Yeah.
Good. Next slide.
And the one guy said, "That's me in the picture."
Yeah.
Right.
That was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
That's cool.
He was like, "That's me in the picture."
That was Mr. Grabhorn.
Okay, that was it.
Yeah.
Okay, one other thing that's not on there I wanted to add. as many of you are aware, I called around and spoke to you about some static that was happening regarding American Jet out at the airport with rumors and things. Well, we ran that to ground. We finally got in touch with the San Bernardino County Airport Authority, who has oversight over the Chino Airport, where these rumors were coming from. A company that we can reveal called Navion Customs was trying to secure their space that they'd actually lost through a proposal process. Interestingly enough, this airport, when your lease is up, you have to submit a statement of proposal to actually get your space back potentially, and they will review other proposals. Their proposal wasn't good enough. American Jet's was. So they're currently in a building that American Jet has been waiting to occupy along with another building. They got two buildings out of this statement of proposal process. This company had called around and stirred things up enough that American Jet issued a cease and desist letter, engaged an attorney. I hope I sent that to you. If not, I will make sure you see that just to show you the validity of their concerns. They were being disparaged and yeah, so they were upset about that and it issued that. So we talked to the San Bernardino County folks. They said that American Jet is not only communicative, but they're in good standing with them. So that's what we wanted to know. And we feel good about that and feel good about also hopefully this company stopping with the harassment, following legal procedure.
And they were contacting our tenants, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
And our tenants were picking this up.
City of Scappoose, Transwestern, Intercept that we know of. Yeah.
Yeah, so pretty bad.
We now know that what was the cause and what was the issue and the route that we're frantically trying to stay where they're at. And I'm not sure how that's going to end for them down there. We don't have to worry about that so much, but sadly, a lot of things was stirred up around here in the airport. So up to and including, I will tell you one other final thing about that is it was witnessed that their two Suburbans were picked up the last week. It turns out they have a contract security firm called IPS. IPS arranged to have those vehicles retrieved because the American Jet has not been back out to the site yet as they work through their shifting of their business model to the retrofitting. So yeah, the Suburbans had sat out there empty. The IPS wasn't going out there providing security, so they came and picked them up. That includes my report. I'll try to get some pictures too in the future, some things when we're out and about in the Port District, things that might be of interest to you.
Thank you for that. Commissioner reports.
Not my report. I also met with Chris Dudley and share your same thoughts. Very personable, interesting. Talked a lot about basketball, which obviously I'm passionate about, and about concerns out here and his thoughts on those. So that was really nice. And if he does end up governor, I think it started a relationship the port could have with him directly. I don't know if that's likely or not. I'm not going to weigh in on that, but it was a good meeting and I was happy to be able to participate in that.
Thank you, Brian. Robert?
One thing I've got is I'm keeping my eye on a Sun article last few days that the county is trying to balance their budget by increasing revenues. And one things they're looking at is development fees increases. So it's kind of counter to what we do. My public suggestion to the county would be stop hiring people. You won't need as much money to operate. And there was a bunch of other things in there that I don't purport to be any of my business, but the development fees concerns me because it's what we do. And it's kind of short-sighted to charge people to come here and pay property taxes and pay payroll taxes and
all right.
Have to keep an eye on that.
Thank you, Robert. I'm going to stay way out of that if I can. See ya.
I didn't have anything, Michael.
Okay.
The one thing I want to bring up is the BDIC meeting. During the course of the meeting, Truitt got up and gave a very interesting, detailed report on the problem that they have had with the fact that fences have been built on the dike. Been through, huh?
Gates specifically.
Gates, yes. And the They have been to the county. The county determined that no, those people had the right to put those gates up. They just felt that that couldn't possibly be true. So Truitt, on his own, went through an enormous process, as you can imagine, to go clear back to the 20s and find out about all the easements that had been put through and find out that no, they were not granted a right to put those gates up. And what I found so shocking is that this is a government agency, this is our county, who should know these or at least be willing to investigate them, and instead forced a person within the community who has nothing to do with rules and regulations to go and spend their time and effort to ferret out this information. And he took it to the county and the county goes, oh, you're right. Yeah, okay. And they issued a letter. So the end result is a good result, but relying on citizens to do the job that government is hired to do, wow.
And this is a timely, I actually had somebody reach out about this issue yesterday. And interesting, I don't think everybody is in agreement that Truitt's research was correct. And it's interesting that the county has not actually done this research themselves as the experts, and folks.
And
I'm very.
It's saying that Truitt is correct. So apparently whoever goes to the county says you're the one who's correct.
Yeah.
Is that what's happening?
I think this is going to end up in a legal battle because I believe.
It kind of needs to.
There's some landowners who have their deeds that say otherwise. They believe so. Hired lawyers to say that, and yeah, it's in. Yeah.
My deed is I own to the center of the river, so those deeds, but what the county said before was that they don't have easements.
Right.
It's apparently a public road, but not a county-owned public road, where they're claiming it's a BDIC. It's been a right of way for BDIC, and it's gonna be very interesting to see how that plays out, because I think each deed has different things in it.
Those residents out there all lost mails. That wouldn't improve, they can't keep the road nice enough. The post office bailed out. Fire district had to reroute things for planned responses.
Also,
Yes.
yeah, also something I'm not gonna get in the middle of, so that's.
That's a wise.
Yeah, so,
But we all need to be in the middle of this.
It does have some port, it touches the port because
And-
the road keeps going to port land.
It's not even just about the port. It's about what do we rely on our government agencies to do for us? What are we paying our taxes for? What are we paying all of our assessments for? And then we find out that individuals are having to fight their own battles. I mean, this is the part that I find, I can understand why people get so frustrated with government. And the more that we play into that, the more that we don't do our job and rely on the public to do it for us, the harder it's going to be for anybody to want to support government agencies.
To get back to Robert's point, do you want to pay more for that level of service?
And I mean, this is completely off topic, but what you're talking about, the county, they hired a consulting firm to do the response to the land use thing that gave a
Yes.
60 some odd page report when 2 would have done it, and a very inaccurate report at that. So I don't know what that cost, but you just hired Spencer, our land use guy. You couldn't have used him. I mean,
I'm
just baffled.
I will
Stay out of that one.
Stay out of
stay out of
that.
that one as well. If there's anything else, you guys have not learned very much. Yes. As far as, sorry, do you have anything else to report, Nancy?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. No, you're totally fine. I attended the Lower Columbia Dredge Maintenance meeting. I may have totally butchered that. Got to meet a bunch of my old work colleagues there. Good time. It's fairly in-depth about the channel maintenance stuff, and big surprise, we're gonna have to continually have to dredge out here, which we all knew. But 6 million yards. 6 million yards a year. So that was good.
Any talk about coordinating dredging so that everything gets done at one time?
So not to go too far into the weeds, but it's difficult to do that because they're with the way they dredge. So it's in the time of year they're allowed to dredge, and there's
They have.
there's a lot to it. Not as simple as it seems.
It's a plan. It's a whole lot.
It is a thing. Yeah. So it was good. I'm glad I got to attend that. I was happy with, of course, the staff always does a great job on slides and stuff. Even Sean's got slides now, what he's got going on. Everybody's got them now.
A little quicker too. I like.
Yeah. Love the, proposed, maintenance budget, so we can kind of look at money items that have been brought up, so we can go over them as a commission. Appreciate that. And yeah, that's all I got.
I have one more thing. I apologize.
No more things.
No more things.
Just to get it on the record, I will be signing a professional services agreement with Stewardship Solutions for almost 75,000 for permitting work on Beaver Dock maintenance permit. So it's a big lift, big help for us, and they've done a lot of work already to date that we can use. So
Happy to see that work move forward.
Yeah, me.
You got an email too.
Yeah.
yes, I will send an email to that. Also, real quick, I want to make sure you guys knew the airport runway rehab open house is April 7th.
Bob, that's great.
We have a 3-hour executive session now.
Yeah.
Or it was the recorder. Actually, I got
The board will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192-660 subsection 2F to consider exempt public records, including written legal advice from port counsel, which is privileged and exempt from disclosure. We are not going to meet under 2E. We're taking that off. That's the real property transaction. So that will not be on there today. Representatives of the news media and designated staff are allowed to attend. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the discussions or deliberations that occur during this or any executive session. Court will return to open session after the executive session. We will not have any decisions at that time. Any persons excluded from executive session are welcome to return. Thanks, Jim. When it is resumed. Thank you.
Just frustrated.
meeting adjourned.
He's the only one who